Okay, I think I'm connected.
Alert from Odd Studio. Creating a new live broadcast. Please wait.
Okay, hopefully that's working. Software is acting a little buggy today. Okay, after a long hiatus, I was on retreat for April, and last week I was planning to give one of these talks last week, but I had a dental appointment I had to get to and couldn't change the time. So that's that. We're starting again, and what I'd like to do for the next few weeks is talk about the jhanas. I want to go through the um, sutta references to talk about the jhanas and uh, discuss some of the details. So today's session, I think, will just be kind of a general overview. One thing that you'll notice about the jhanas when you start looking into them is that there seems to be a great deal of different approaches, different theories regarding the jhanas out there. It's one area of Buddhist practice and doctrine that I found to have the most sort of disagreements. Oh, here's my new buddy here. He's coming, crawling around. So I think you'll find quite a variance when you start looking at different teachers, different sources talking about jhanas. Many approaches use the Visuddhimagga as a primary source. That's a quite late commentarial source. And as we'll see, I want to discuss the comparison of that to the Sutta references. That they are a bit different. Sutta references are kind of limited in terms of detail, so it was natural that the commentarial period they would flesh things out. Another thing I'd like to another general point, let's say, that I'd like to establish is that the centrality and the importance of jhana practice in the Buddhist discourse and the Buddhist practice. The word, if you see the word meditate in a Buddhist source translated from Pali, the original Pali was most likely, there are a couple of other words that might be used, but most commonly it's jayati, which is from the same root as jhana. So to meditate was the equivalent of doing jhana. Well, that's what to meditate meant. The word jhana itself is a Pali word derived from the Sanskrit dhyana, 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 and that word got transformed into Chinese and Japanese as Chan and Zen. So Chan and Zen are the words derive from dhyana or jhana. So it has a central connection to the whole idea of meditation. In fact, it is, you might say, to meditate is to do jhana. So that leads on to a third point. I'd like to kind of demystify the concept of jhana. Many people approach it as some kind of very esoteric, exotic state of being. This is not helped by some older translations that translate jhana as trance. Jhana is really, in essence, it's simply the mind at rest or in its natural state. When you get past the confusions and perplexities of the sense desire sphere, then the mind naturally becomes unified and peaceful and happy. And as the samadhi deepens, one gets more and more of the experience of what we call jhana. Also, and as I said at the outset, many people have different opinions on the jhana, and I'd like to state my approach, which you can take or leave, but this is what I find the most useful way of looking at it, is not to be too concerned with the technicalities of the definitions, but to see the passage through the jhanas as not so much discrete, clearly definable states, but as a continuum of a deeper and deeper samadhi. So the boundary lines between ordinary mind and first jhana, and between first jhana and second jhana, etc., I think are not hard and fast boundaries, but kind of fuzzy transitions. And I believe this is where a lot of the disagreement comes into in different sources, because different people just define different states along the way as being this or that particular jhana. I'd also like to clarify some of the language that we use. One of the most important concepts is samadhi, which is the mind state really most conducive to the experience of jhana. And jhana can be defined as a perfection of samadhi or a deepening of samadhi. Samadhi is usually translated concentration. It seems to have been standardized that way, but in my opinion and opinion of other teachers that I've spoken to, concentration is a misleading choice. It's a poor choice of words. It's just become a kind of legacy. It's stuck in there. There's a lot of that from the oldest translations. And concentration, I think, is one that's particularly problematic because I think it misleads people into making an error in their meditation of excuse me, making an error in their meditation of pushing the mind too hard. Samadhi is defined in the old texts like the Visuddhimagga and the Abhidhamma as stability or non-wavering of mind. That the mind is still. So this is related to the idea of a unified mind, which is ekagata. The mind is not moving from object to object, but it's not narrowed onto the object. It's not forced. The mind in jhana is vast and expansive, and we can see that in the cosmological parallel. The Brahma gods are said to have equivalent consciousness to jhana. It's not identical, but it's an equivalent. And the mind of a Brahma takes in thousands of world systems, so it's deliberately described as being vast and expansive and open. And it's the mind with jhana is expansive. It's without boundary, apamana. So get away from the idea of concentration, of narrowing the mind. So generally when I talk about it, I like to just leave the word samadhi untranslated, because I don't think there is a good one English word to translate it. So we have a system that's come down to us that originates with the Buddha of 4 jhanas, the rupa jhanas. That's what we mostly talk about. And then there's 4 additional arupa jhanas, so the jhanas of form and the jhanas of formless. And we can talk about this in the coming weeks. We can talk about the definitions of the particular jhanas, and what distinguishes one from the other, what constitutes jhana and ordinary mind. The main thing that prevents or makes difficult the entry of the mind into jhana is the presence of the 5 hindrances, the nivarana. The nivarana are a set of 5 defilements, and the word nivarana means like wandering away or going in the wrong direction. So they don't operate so much as obstacles or blockages on the path as side paths that one wanders down. The mind loses the tranquility and loses samadhi, loses unification, and becomes interested or diverted into these side paths. These are sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, anxiety, and skeptical doubt. And when these are not present in the mind, when they're quiescent, then the mind naturally settles into first jhana. It is really the natural state of being when we're not distracted, when we're not wandering down one of these side paths. The mind naturally takes its resting place in a deeper samadhi that we define as jhana. It's also to be seen that the passage from ordinary mind to jhana, and then progressively through the 4 jhanas, and then also could extend it to the 4 rupa jhanas. Each step along the way is a simplification and a purification. And this again goes to the concept of returning to a natural mind. The progression does not add anything to the mind. It's not some special new attainment that's added to the mind. It's peeling off the layers of confusion caused by the diversion by the nivaranas, and allowing the mind to settle into a more natural state. It's like coming home. And again, there's a cosmological parallel to this concept in the Aganya Sutta, the Sutta of the Origins, which is the origin or creation myth that we find in Theravada Buddhism. That at the beginning of a new world cycle, the world comes into being from the top down. So the Brahma gods appeared before the Devas, and they appeared before the humans. And what happens is that in the early stage of the earth, when the earth is just being formed and it's covered in ocean, and the sky is dark, covered in dark clouds, which is an interesting detail because we can find analogies to the early geological history in our current understanding. But be that as it may, at that stage, Abhasara Brahmas, that is the Brahmas who have an equivalency to second jhana, they descend to the earth, and by entangling themselves in material form, by tasting the foam on the ocean, they become human beings through various stages of devolution. Now, the point I'm getting at, this is kind of a long digression, but the point here is that mythologically, we are fallen Brahma gods. Human beings are fallen Brahma gods. So getting into jhana is like remembering what we once were. The mind is returning to its more primordial, more natural state. It's certainly a simplified state. It's less. There are less factors, less going on in a state of jhana than there is in ordinary sense experience, and there are less factors in each succeeding jhana, which we'll get into that. So that's pretty much all the points I wanted to make for today's introduction. Just to review, first of all, that be aware that if you start looking into literature on jhana, you'll find all kinds of disagreements amongst teachers. It's not. Don't be surprised by that. Don't be off-put by it. Everybody's just trying to explain it as best they can. It doesn't really mean one's right and one's wrong. The other point I want to make is that it's not something so strange to our being. It's not some exotic attainment beyond human capacity. It's a natural state of the human mind. And every reasonably well-balanced, sane person is capable of experiencing jhana. And an important point to bear in mind, I think maybe the most important point as we go into discussion of details, is that the whole progression is one of simplification and purification. It's not adding anything to the mind. Okay, so I'll leave it there, and as usual, we'll go to the chat and see what's what here. Yeah, it's a new cat. I haven't really settled 100% on a name for him yet. We just picked him up at the shelter last week. Is it possible to live in jhana permanently without knowing one is living in a jhana state? No. No, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be possible. Uh, um, you're not able to really be active in jhana. Upon close examination of the concept of jhana, I can see that it too is ultimately sankhara and nicha dukkha, despite being very sublime and pleasant in the moment. Is the ultimate goal then to go after the root cause of it all, as theoretically with the cessation of all fabrications, arriving at emptiness, grasping at nothing, becoming free? Yes, jhana is not liberation, but it's the Buddha said it has the taste of liberation, and it's a very useful precursor. It moves the mind towards liberation. It's like you're peeling off a whole layer of samkhara and experiencing a more simple mind, having less to deal with. And the optimum moment for doing insight and for realizing that the nature of reality is immediately after emergence from jhana. And when we see the Buddha talk about paths to liberation, the one that he talks about most frequently, he talks about different variations here and there, but the one he mentions the most frequently is going through first, second, third, and fourth jhana, and then applying insight. Next question. If I posit that samadhi runs on the spectrum, low quiet to the jhana states, can samadhi be found in insight, hindrances stilled, or is samadhi only found when entering jhana, unifying the mind? No, samadhi is also required for insight, but the type of samadhi, let's say, is different. Some with insight, one is not, the mind is not still as such. It's being aware of different objects and penetrating their nature. When one is resting on a single object, that's not really possible. So Mahasi Sayadaw, for example, the great Burmese Vipassana master, he talks about the state of mind when doing Vipassana as a momentary samadhi. That the mind has the same kind of level of samadhi, but just for a moment on each object as it arises. In light of the emphasis placed on samadhi by the Buddha and the Thai forest tradition, why do you suppose Longpa Sumedho seems to go out of his way to de-emphasize deep samadhi states? I'm not really aware that he's done that, but it maybe just reinforces my initial point that people have different takes on it. And it may be that he's I'm just speculating because I'm not aware of his particular teaching in that regard, but it may be that he's wanting people not to get discouraged if they can't if they find it difficult to and not to be discouraged and to give up on their meditation. Next one, rupa being is defined as states of pure mind, but we know mind is an emergent phenomena of highly complex interplay of matter and energy, conditioned by cause and space. Now, you're making a big assumption there. You're making a materialist assumption. Mind is mind. In our human state, it's intermixed with physicality and the energetic aspects of the body, but it's not necessarily a cause of it, and it's certainly not the assumption in Buddhism is not that the mind is a result of a complex as you say, a complex interplay of matter and energy. Mind is mind and matter is matter. They're two separate categories in the Abhidhamma, and one is not the cause of the other. Is there biofeedback associated with jhana states? There is at least in first and second jhana for sure. Uh, this is the factor of piti, which is translated often as rapture, and that has a definite bodily correlate. One feels energetic movement in the body. It's a very purifying kind of state of mind. I think that um, if it's not the same, I think it's related to concepts in other traditions like chi or even kundalini. Is there a distinction between piti and sensual pleasure? Isn't piti felt in the body? It is, but it's not. It's not classed as a sensual pleasure. Although I may suppose by one definition it could be. The Buddha says that the happiness experienced in deep meditation is the blameless pleasure separate from the senses. It's mind generated. It's generated by the mind, even if it is experienced somewhat in the body. It is primarily a mental factor, but it has this side effect or correlate in the body. Is walking meditation too much for jhana? No, it's not as easy to get into jhana for sure. But according to the sources, it is possible. Could jhana be described as relaxed awareness? I think that's not a bad expression, but it may be inadequate to really catch all the nuances of it. But basically it is, yes, it is a relaxed awareness. I feel that first to fourth jhana are gradually increased collectedness of the mind on the object of meditation. Is that correct, Ajahn? Yeah, I think you could say that. The mind becomes more unified, more settled. If bedridden, can we still go into jhana? Yes. Maybe somewhat more difficult to avoid sleepiness, but it's possible for sure. Can jhana happen without object of meditation? That's actually a good question. I think jhana-like experiences can happen outside of formal meditation. If people are focused on a task, they can sometimes, the mind can go into a very unified sort of state. Then it's not quite jhana. This is again the whole issue of definition, but it has many of the aspects of jhana. If someone's doing particularly kind of very fine, detailed work that requires great concentration, or even I think also in some more physical activities, like some kind of even sport that requires skilled concentration. That athletes talk about being in the zone. I think that's a state equivalent or akin to jhana. Is jhana necessary for entry into udang soto akinatagami? I'm not sure what that is. What does preconditioned volition in the causal chain of events? Nothing arises without a cause or a single cause. It would be their sense of agency and volitional actions akin to our sense of self or misperception. That is compatible with Einstein's view of the world, deterministic block, embracing all possible events. Can a monk hold this view that is rejected in the Sangha? Well, there's no self, so the whole Western debate about free will versus determinism is sort of irrelevant. there is a factor of chaitana or volition, which is then it's also conditioned. Conditioned is not the same as saying determined. Um, it means that it arises from conditions, but there's an element of freedom in there. Can you explain the connection and relation between iddhipada, samadhi, and jhanas, please? Yeah, I should probably get into that in subsequent weeks about the iddhipadas. The iddhipadas are the four bases of success. Chitta, chanda, virya, vimamsa. That is in chitta or unified chitta, chanda or enthusiasm, vimamsa and investigation, and virya energy. And for success in any endeavor, they're required. And there's actually a text that talks about them being necessary for jhana, and that one of the four will be between individuals. One of the four will be strongest and will be the principal factor of allowing jhana to occur. There were very beautiful and ancient Buddha statues in Afghanistan. Did the Taliban who destroyed these statues get bad karma? Yes, yeah, definitely that was bad karma. That was evil karma of destroying sacred objects. And I would think, it would be the same if they were Christian objects or Hindu objects. I think it's bad karma to be destroying things like that. We are not creations of Earth, we are Earth itself, and Earth is not a separate creation of the universe, but it's the universe itself. Nothing is immaterial or immaterial is truly separate. So in a quite literal sense, the observer and the observed are ultimately one and the same interplay of matter and energy of sorts. That sounds very much like Huayan Buddhism, that everything is a reflection of everything else. Okay, here's a reference for Akanita Gamini. I'll have to write that down. I'll have a look at that. Okay. Regarding previous questions, asking if the freedom of volition might not be illusion itself. It's an illusion in only insofar as everything else is like everything else. It's not self. It's dukkha, anicca, and it's subject to causation. It's subject to dependent origination, so it's not independently arisen. But I think it's a complete fallacy to fall into the idea of determinism. Do you have techniques for not falling asleep for practicing meditation while lying down, please? That's somewhat difficult, but you might look at posture for once. The recommended position for lying meditation is to lie on the right side, with the upper leg slightly bent, the lower leg straight, and the right hand underneath the head. And in fact, it's actually the full posture is to rest the head on, have the head propped up, resting it on the hand. I find that difficult to maintain. That it seems to be hard on the wrist after a few minutes, but you might experiment with that. Also, you might other things you might try is keeping the eyes open, having light in the room, and not being in the dark. And if you find yourself falling asleep, then to energize the body in some way, shift the posture a bit. Okay, let's see. Bhante, if I believe that with the object of the breath, samadhi starts to build, and when the time comes to pursue jhana, at that point I can move to contemplation of the subha or going to insight. Yeah, you could. That would be switching your meditation to something else, but you might find that's a valid practice. You might find that conducive. Abstract mind, may I please receive your logic behind why it would be a fallacy? What I think you're referring to is a determinism. If determinism were true, there would be no liberation. There'd be no point in anything. The Buddha very definitely rejected the determinist view. There were philosophers in his time who held it. I think it just by experience you can see that there are options or possibilities in the mind. The Buddha taught husband and wife can be reborn again as a couple. Can a man and a woman who both achieve stream entry continue to feel romantic love? Yes, yeah. Stream entry doesn't. It doesn't preclude the possibility of sensual desire or romantic love. That begins to wane with the second stage, Sakadagami, and eliminated in Ananagami. Alaya body and jhanas have a relation. The alaya body is a concept from Yogacara Buddhism. It's it's often called the storehouse consciousness in English. I'm not sure because I'm not well studied in that school, so I don't know how they relate it to jhana. I have a question about ancient Greek Buddhists. Do we have any sources about Buddhist missionaries to Sri Lanka? Can we say Mahayana was a part of Greek influence? Was Asoka 25% Greek? You know who's an expert on Greek Buddhism is Ajahn Sona in British Columbia. He's done quite a study on that. And there are sources about the missionaries to Sri Lanka. They came from India, but there were also there's also mention of Yona, which are Greeks. I don't think Mahayana was necessarily a product of Greek influence. It may have been, not in its origin. Some of the thoughts and details developed in different schools may have had Greek influence. It's kind of hard to prize that apart. I haven't heard that Asoka was part Greek. I would be interested if there was some information in that regard. I'm not trying to westernize Buddhism. I just want to know Buddhist history. Sorry for changing the topic. That's okay. I'm told that I don't know if they're out yet. I'm told that Ajahn is doing a video series on Greek Buddhism. I myself did a series on the early history of Theravada, but I didn't particularly go into the Greek angle. If I am male and happy being male, suddenly I am reborn as a female animal or the female deva, what would be the reason that would lead to being born female? Okay, this may upset some people, but what the commentaries say about it, the Buddha, I don't, to my knowledge, never really expressed that detail, but in the commentaries, it said that sexual misconduct, being promiscuous or overly concerned with sex, leads to one being reborn female. What do you think happens when we experience deja vu? I think in many cases it's past life memory. There's some situation that brings to mind experiences of a past life, and you have a strong feeling, oh, I've seen this before, I've done this before, because you have, but you don't, not in this lifetime. Okay, I think I'll be signing out soon. Let's just use one more here to follow up. The female reborn is not suddenly, is because the male have a lot of attachment for sensuality in all senses. Okay. I think that's basically what it says. Okay, so we'll come back next week and we'll talk in some more detail about the jhana factors and so on. So, thank you.